Hey guys, Kid Kino here. Last time we saw the original kaiju boom peak in 1967, with every major studio in Japan involved in the production of at least one kaiju film, not to mention the massive popularity of kaiju on television with the original Ultraman series. Unfortunately, the phenomenal success of television was eroding the success of the Japanese film industry in general, and elaborate special effects-driven productions like kaiju films certainly weren't going to emerge from that decline unscathed. Both of the major ongoing franchises were going to have to make some changes as the 60s drew to a close. First up, there's Gamera vs. Virus. The Gamera series, having been from the start a good deal cheaper than the Godzilla films even at the peak of Gamera vs. Barugan, was an early and completely unflinching adopter of the kind of belt-tightening the circumstances demanded. The budget for Gamera vs. Gyaos had been a drop to 60 million yen from Barugan's 80 million. With Virus, Daiei just said fuck it and slashed it all the way down to 24 million. They went all in on reusing footage from previous films, something the Godzilla series had up to this point done pretty sparingly, and had yet to really embrace in earnest. This has contributed quite a bit to the film's bad reputation. There's a sequence where the aliens read Gamera's memories via footage from the previous films to find his weakness that is particularly notorious for going on forever. The funny thing is, it was actually very short and to the point in the original Japanese version. It was actually the international version provided to foreign distributors that extended it to nearly 20 minutes. The current home video version is kind of a compromise between those two, but even cut down by 9 minutes, that sequence is still entirely too long. Here's hoping the upcoming Arrow box set will include the original Japanese cut, but this isn't even mentioning the black and white footage from the original film that's passed off as current events in this film. It's not even done in a clever way where it's on a TV or something, it's just there. That aside though, to tell you the truth, I kinda like this one. It is deliberately kind of a less sophisticated film designed to appeal as directly as possible to kids, but it is reasonably well made. It makes pretty effective use of rather sparse sets as its two young protagonists explore the alien ship they're captured by, learn about their captors, and ultimately devise a way to sabotage their invasion. These kids are fairly well acted in comparison to similar protagonists later in the series, even Carl Craig as Jim, who apparently had no prior acting experience. They're portrayed as resourceful and mischievous, kinda like George and Harold from the Captain Underpants books, and the script has some pretty decent plant and payoff moments involving those traits. Not to mention the moment where they hear that the UN is deciding whether to sacrifice them and attack the spaceship or surrender, and without hesitating they say to go ahead and attack. Respect. This film, like many of the Showa Gamera films, is often dismissed for being aimed at children, but honestly, I think it's pretty good children's entertainment. Same goes for the special effects sequences. They're often overshadowed by the stock footage, but the final battle between Gamera and Virus is, again, a little silly and clearly aimed at kids, but good fun. Next, there's what was originally intended to be the last Godzilla film, Destroy All Monsters. This is a film I don't come back to all that often, mostly because I don't find the stuff in between the monster scenes all that interesting. It's clearly written working backwards from the idea of one last huge battle uniting a huge roster of Toho kaiju, including a few that hadn't previously appeared in a Godzilla film, and in its finished form the story still mostly serves to link together a series of monster set pieces. That said, good god, these set pieces are absolutely worth the price of admission. Sadamasa Arikawa and his mentor Eiji Tsuburaya pull out all the stops in the special effects sequences, and Akira Ifukube supplies some real bangers. Like I said though, even with Ishiro Honda's excellent direction, it's the story in between these sequences that lets the film down in my opinion, and holds it back from the classic status of, say, Mothra vs. Godzilla or Invasion of Astro Monster. Next up, there's Gamera vs. Giron, which replicates the formula that Virus succeeded with. A very low budget, Japanese and American child protagonists, an alien invasion, and monster scenes that alternate between being light and comedic and being surprisingly violent. I can't really defend this one as much as I can Virus, Even with a lot of the film taking place on an alien planet, the scope somehow feels smaller, the child characters don't have half the personality, and the B-plot with nobody believing Akio's little sister about the spaceship obviously doesn't hold a candle to the dilemma of whether to attack the virus spaceship with Masao and Jim on board. That said, this film is just so odd and off the wall that I can't help kind of enjoying it. Giron itself is a goofy but extremely memorable monster, and there's something indescribably funny about watching it just absolutely butcher the space gyaos in what's obviously a film for very young children. This one's a guiltier pleasure than Virus, but I can't deny it's fun. Then there's Latitude Zero. This one's a strange beast, and honestly mostly interesting as a novelty and not so much as a film. It's a collaboration between Toho and American producer Don Sharp, based on a radio serial from the 40s written by the film's screenwriter Ted Sherdeman. It's more of an old-fashioned Western adventure story about a mysterious, scientifically advanced civilization under the sea, and only really qualifies for the binge because of a griffin creature created by the villain Malik, played by Cesar Romero. He and Joseph Cotton's Captain Mackenzie headline the film, supported by a handful of other Western actors and a few of Toho's actors. The whole film was shot in English, so if you want to hear Akira Takarada and Akihiko Hirata delivering their lines in English, I guess there's that. There's also Tetsu Nakamura as a scientist kidnapped by Malik. You might recognize him from his role as one of Nelson's henchmen in the original Mothra. He has a couple entertainingly over-the-top line readings here.
My God, no! Don't kill that woman!
Think of it, Dr. Okada. A human brain and a savage beast.
I beg you, don't do this terrible thing. I will give you the formula.
The cast are intermittently amusing, but honestly the film's a slog, especially given the 105-minute runtime of the international version. Even the creatures in this movie are kind of a letdown. The bat people look ridiculous, and Tsuburaya doesn't seem too concerned about polishing that turd. Hell, just look at those wires. The Griffin isn't much better, except when it turns on Malik's submarine, the Black Shark, and just starts wailing on it with no overcranking on the camera. There's just something inherently compelling about a person in an animal suit going completely apeshit on something or someone. I think it's the same appeal as Nyango Star. Honestly though, outside of a few great moments like that, this film really is pretty dull. August Ragone tells me that the shorter US cut is better. Maybe the even shorter Japanese dubbed version is better still, but I'm really not dying to find out. Finally, we close out the 1960s with All Monsters Attack. This is a film that, a lot like Gamera vs. Virus, has long been written off as one of the worst in the series because it's aimed at children and relies heavily on stock footage. I honestly disagree. I like this film, and I've seen a good deal of people recently kind of coming around to it as well, which is nice. Obviously, this isn't really on the same level as a lot of the films preceding it, but it goes so far beyond what was required of it that I can't help being kind of impressed. All Toho really needed this film to do was appeal to kids, get more mileage out of existing special effects footage, and not cost a lot of money. What Ishiro Honda came up with was not only a good kids' adventure film, but a reflection on what we today would call fandom and what monsters meant to kids, not to mention a rather thoughtful commentary on the dark side of Japan's booming economy. Someday I'm gonna make a video that gets into that stuff in detail and fully explores what this film brings to the table. This isn't that video, but look, I know this isn't quite the hot take it was even just a couple of years ago, but I really can't be mad at a children's film as layered as this one, and yeah, there's a lot of stock footage, but come on, you get a couple films worth of monster fights in only about, 70 minutes. That is value. But there is still kind of an orthodox take on this film that I realize still holds a lot of sway among Godzilla fans, so let me just say this. Just give it another watch sometime, subtitled if the dub bothers you, and really think about Ichiro's situation, what causes it, and how he deals with it. Even if you don't come away from it with a newfound appreciation, at least you won't have wasted much of your time. And that's it for this episode. Next time we'll see how the Big Two series coped with changing times and the continuing decline of the Japanese film industry with Gamera vs. Jiger and Zigra, Godzilla vs. Hedorah and Gigan, and the Ishiro Honda one-off Space Amoeba. Thanks as always for watching, and special thanks to my patrons, especially Exploder Button, John Pinier, and Ryan Clark. If you would like to support my work too, you can become a patron at the link in the description, and I'll see you next time.